Hello and welcome. My name is Matthew Coast, and you are here watching us talk about the number one reason why um, you are attracting toxic partners. And so, um, with me today is Marcy Newman. And she is an expert in helping you heal from toxic partners, making sure that you don't end up with another one because that sucks.
Right.
So, if you're here with us right now and you are ready to figure out why you attract these toxic partners and instead attract something much better into your life, then type yes into the chat and let's get started. So,
Yes.
so Marcy, let's talk about this a little bit. Um, how, like, before we jump into why people are attracting toxic partners, like, let's talk a little bit about like what does that mean? Like a toxic partner, what does that look like? Like, how do we know that somebody's a toxic partner as opposed to maybe a healthy partner or somebody that they want to be with?
Yeah. What a great question. What a great place for us to jump off from. Basically, what that means is that it is someone who is in relationship from the place of their wounds rather than from the place of their heart and their mind that has been healed by their heart. So when somebody is in this toxic, you might even call it a phase, because not everybody stays there if they are doing their own work, right? But what happens is very often these people who have not done any work and are so toxic are intent on calling to them people who they think will take over their healing for them. And this is where lots of women get into trouble because women, by, I guess, by character, all right, we want to take care of people. It's just who we are. We're caregivers and we're compassionate and loving, and it tends to set us up very often for toxic relationships. And so I'm so thrilled that we're having this conversation because it just doesn't have to be that way. And,
Mhm.
honestly, Matt, like you and I always say, it's just got to stop. It's got to stop.
Gotta stop.
It's
It's
got
gotta
to
stop.
stop
It is stopping today.
today.
Stopping today.
That's
No
right.
more, no toxicity anymore.
No,
To kind of add to what you're talking about there, like, I think that's pretty profound, this idea of like, coming from their own, unhealed wounds and
hmm
stuff. Um, I'd like to kind of throw in another kind of idea around this because a lot of times when people are healing or they're getting out of toxic situations or they're trying to avoid toxic situations, they get overly sensitive, right? They get very, very sensitive. It's like when you have a cut on your arm or something like that and somebody touches, it's like, normally somebody can touch your arm, it's no problem. But if you have a
sure.
wound there, it's painful, right? And so a lot of times what happens is that you might end up looking at things and being like, oh, any kind of negativity, any kind of conflict, any kind of anything is a bad thing. And we got to, like, I don't want anything like that. I don't want anyone that's like that. And it's like, that might not be exactly realistic. What you want to look at is, ultimately, like, how does this make you feel? Like, how does this impact your life? Right? Is this relationship adding to your life, or is it overall net taking from your life? Right?
Sure.
Because when two people get together, we're from different backgrounds. We're all from different backgrounds. And so there are conflicts, there's clashes, there's things that happen where you're not going to agree on everything. And so, you know, I would say take a look at it and say, is this, if it's something where you're coming from this relationship and every time you're around this partner, you feel bad, that's a big clue that you're probably in something that's not really serving you, not serving your soul, not serving your life. You might want to rethink what's going on there.
I really like what you said, Matt, because, I don't want anyone to have the impression as that just because there are challenges in a relationship, that it automatically, falls under this category. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about repetitive patterns that come from these places of deep wounding and that are not being addressed. There is a completely different atmosphere to a relationship when you have two people who are doing their own healing and coming together in relationship, trying to offer their very best selves, right? And building the relationship from that place. When you have someone who is so enthralled with their own toxicity and expect you to take care of all of the issues, what you're really dealing with is number one, someone in denial, excuse me, number one, about themselves and what their responsibility is, but also that they may not have the capacity to see their own toxicity, in which case other things will be masking that. And we can talk more about that as we get deeper into our conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a concept that I talk about a lot, right? Which is this idea. I didn't make this up. I actually got this from ancient Greece. In ancient Greece, they had this concept that they called the golden mean, right? Which is this, or the golden middle, right? Which is this idea that a lot of things are better or in the middle, right? In the middle ground. This isn't always true. It's not true for everything, but it in generally in most of life, if you're on one of these extremes of things where you're, like taking no responsibility for anything, or you're taking responsibility too much for things that aren't yours to take responsibility for, that's not a healthy place to be. There's a middle ground where you're taking responsibility for the things that are your responsibility, but you're not taking responsibility for things that aren't your responsibility.
That's right.
And I know that's could be sound like a little bit of a abstract concept there. So let's so now that we've talked a little bit about this idea of like what toxicity is, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Marcy.
Sure,
I don't know.
I love
Do you
that.
like being put on? You like being put on the
I
spot?
love it.
Okay, so what is the number one reason that someone attracts a toxic partner?
Yeah. Whew. Well, I do have to tell you that it comes from an unhealed place within you. And this, there's part of this whole concept about relationship where we just have to accept that we come together actually to provide an opportunity for healing our hearts, healing our own trauma, and raising the vibrational frequency of our energy. So what happens very often is that your partner may, be pressing buttons, right, that have you, thinking that there's no harmony to be had, when in fact, every time we come into a space of conflict, there's always an invitation there. And the invitation is, number one, to ask yourself, how can I see things differently? Matt, I love so much what you said about, making certain that you're not putting yourself in a position where you're taking responsibility for what is not yours to heal. But what happens when we keep attracting someone and we find ourselves in these toxic relationships? Number one, very often it's because there's a familiarity about it. Okay. There is that repetitive, and I'm going to use the word, you're going to accuse me of being woo-woo here, Matt, but there's a repetitive reaction to the energy. All right. So the energy of toxicity has a particular vibrational frequency. And when we have had many of those relationships, when we perhaps have even been raised in toxicity, that energy is so familiar, we find ourselves drawn to it. But if you are creating this higher level of awareness within you about whether or not, like Matt said earlier, this feels good or it doesn't, you can start to make adjustments in your own energy field so that you start to attract healthier partners. And again, as our conversation goes on, we can go deeper and deeper and deeper into this based on, what of course all of you want to hear. But it's such an important concept to know that everything that we're experiencing is somehow working for us, even though it might feel awful. But it's where then we are reminded that we have this ability to make a different choice. And so then we have to start talking about cultivating the courage to do that. So this is going to be such a great conversation. I can feel it already.
Yeah, it's powerful. I want to touch on a couple things you were just mentioning there. First one is this idea of patterns. A lot of the things that a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of the things that you do, a lot of the things that you say, a lot of everything that happens in your life is on kind of like this loop, right? It's this thing that kind of happens every day. Like you have many of the same thoughts every single day. You do the same things every single day, right? Like this is, for most people, this is what their life looks like. Over time, what happens is you start looking at that and you go, oh, I do this every day, so I must be this kind of a person, right? But in reality, you aren't that kind of a person. You've just done something so many times that it becomes like, it feels so familiar to you, feels so comfortable to you that you feel like that's a part of who you are, right? But in reality, a lot of these things, they weren't things that you were born with and you had it as a part of your personality. They're things that you were given. Most of who you think you are and your habits and your the way that you live, it actually gets ingrained in you before you hit 18, right? And much of it happens in the first few years of your life, right?
That's right.
And you don't even know, right? And over time, it's like, I don't even know what life was like without this, right? But it was given to you. It was given to you by your parents and the people that you're around, the television or the computer or whatever you look at when you're growing up, the environment that you live in and the things that were happening there. And so, if you have a pattern or you keep getting into similar situations, that is not your destiny. It doesn't have to be. For most people, it's going to be, right? Like people are absolutely amazing. What people can do is absolutely extraordinary.
That's
what
right.
Most people do actually with themselves is kind of it's kind of disappointing. But you can change it. You can create whatever it is that you want. And I'm not going to say it's always easy, but it's definitely worth it. And so if you get what we're talking about here, go ahead and say, I get it in the chat. If you don't get what we're talking about, or maybe you have any questions about your situation or what's going on with you, it doesn't have to specifically be on this topic. We're going to be answering questions here in just a minute. Yeah. Did you want to say anything else about that, Marcy?
Yeah, I do. And I want to emphasize something. This is so important. I spoke a moment ago about developing this new awareness, right? And this comes with your life experiences. It comes with maturity, but it also comes from a place of becoming very clear about what it is that you want. What you want in your experience in life, what you want in your partner, what you want to be. In other words, with clarity also comes a completely different and new image of who we want to be. Well, once you start to create that new image of yourself, I just want you to know that that old partner may not be the partner for you. And so you might find then that it becomes, for all appearances, to be toxic. because you have one person who is ready for change, right? And wants to be a greater expression of themselves, and another person who doesn't want to do the work that that requires. And so you might start to experience a lot of push and pull in those kinds of relationships. But what I want you to know is at the moment that what you want in your life starts to change, your healing has actually already begun. So I know a lot of times people will say, oh my God, it's so overwhelming. I can't even think about it. I would have to do this, this, and this. And my answer to that is no, you don't. You just need to get clearer and clearer and clearer about who you want to be in this world, what you want to experience. And the universe actually does the rest. You have to allow it, because there will always be things that you will be letting go of. And that includes relationships. It also includes belief systems, patterns like Matt was talking about. We have to let those go because they're no longer feeding this new you that your heart is actually yearning to express. And this is a wonderful time in life, absolutely pivotal time in life. So it's a matter of allowing ourselves really to mature into who we actually came here to be, and the kind of love that we came here to experience, and the life that that creates. So be encouraged rather than discouraged.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite things about you, Marcy, is just how like positive and like, like focused. You're focused on, on moving forward. And I just love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. Oh, and by the way, if you're watching right now and you're interested in getting more from Marcy, can you talk a little bit, Marcy, about the how to shift from self-sabotage to self-love in 5 days? I'm going to be posting the link in the chat.
Oh, thanks so much, Matt. Yeah, this is an ebook that I've written because what I realized is that, if you know me, or even if you're not familiar with me, what I want you to know is that my focus is really on self-love. And I look at the healing journey as the journey of coming to the place where you are finally loving yourself in a way where you recognize the most important thing is that you are answering that yearning in your heart to be all that you came here to be and to experience the greatness and the joys of life. And so this ebook is, number one, how to recognize that self-sabotage, right? Because you need to know where you're starting from. And a lot of times we don't recognize that. So once you've learned how to recognize the self-sabotage, now you can start to shift into self-love. And I do want you to know that self-love is eventually it sort of becomes this insatiable lover. It's always going to be calling to you. It's always going to be saying to you, follow me, follow me. Let's break out of that pattern. Let's break out of that mindset. Let's break out of the small version of you and let's step into the greatness of all that you are, because there's a great life waiting for you. So please sign up for the book. I promise you that it'll kickstart your journey in a way that will have you feeling great in no time at all.
Awesome. Beautiful. Yeah, check it out. Links in the comments. So I highly recommend all of Marcy's work. That's why we keep having her on here. So we have a lot of people from all over.
Yay, we love this.
FT9889 says, how can you protect yourself from ending up with a cheater if your father cheated on your mother and you're afraid that you might have inherited this energetic pattern ancestrally? Yeah, that's a great question.
That's a great question.
Yeah,
do you want me to go or you want to go?
Let me say something real quick
Sure.
because I just have something on the tip of my tongue, which is so there's a lot like what we were just talking about. A lot of the things that you do end up coming from your childhood, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to follow in the footsteps of somebody else in your family. You might go the opposite direction, right? You might choose a completely new path for yourself. And I think that's important, an important distinction, you know. And one question I would ask you here, you never post your name, but FT9889. One question I'd ask you is, do you have evidence that this has happened to you so far in your life, right? Because if it hasn't, then it might not be a necessary thing to get overly worried about, right? Because sometimes we do. I was talking to my mom a little while back, and she came from a little bit more of a strict environment growing up, right? And then when she raised us, she was like kind of super laissez-faire, you know, like the universe will sort you out and you'll figure your own way, right? And for me, it was vastly too like like not really raising us, right? Kind of a thing. She wanted to be our friends. And then one of my brothers, like when he raised his children, like he was like, you know what I mean? And they have this, it's, you know, they weren't doing exactly the same as what their parents did. Sometimes they do the opposite, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, this isn't exactly the same kind of an example, but, you know, it's something to consider. What do you want to say about it, Marcy?
Yeah, first off, I want you to rest assured that you have not inherited any of that. Number one, you're asking the question. It tells me already that you're completely in a different heart set and a different mindset than your mother was. Number two, you're not your mother. Okay. You have completely different life experiences. You are in different situations where you have been given the opportunity to grow and expand outside of what for many women is the need to cling to a relationship regardless of what's going on. And that, unfortunately, is the experience of many women in the past, but that's not us. That is not us. We don't need to do that because we're already further ahead in our, I guess, for lack of a better term, evolution. We know that our responsibility is to make certain that we are happy and healthy and whole. And so your being here, asking your questions, getting more and more information, wanting to grow beyond where you have been, already you have more than a foot, you have a leg up, okay, on where your mom was. And so we can, you know, send compassion to where your mom was, but rather than having fear that you're going to take that on, the best protection, the best insurance policy is to make certain that you are the highest vibrational frequency that you can possibly be, so that you are attracting to you someone of the same frequency. Meaning, if you're of a high frequency, you're going to attract someone of a high frequency. If you are committed to yourself, which is the indication that you are here, you're telling me that the energy of commitment is high on your list. Well, guess what? You will attract to you someone whose energy of commitment is high on their list too. So, in essence, you don't even need to protect yourself. You just need to be yourself. And you need to feed the parts of yourself that you want to see more of in a relationship. And I know that, you know, some of this might sound like it's abstract, right? But it isn't. It's just so true. Remember, energy is always seeking out energy just like itself. And it comes back in a loop. And how it comes back is always in the form of experience. So feed that commitment, that loyalty, that willingness to be present in your own life. Develop that high level of awareness that Matt and I are talking about. And you'll have that in your relationship. So no fear, just go forward and feed the energy that you want to experience more of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the big thing, one of the big things Marcy's been talking about today is this idea of like awareness, right? Getting awareness and being aware of like what you're looking for, what's going on, what are your patterns, just all this, having this awareness can change everything because it
Does.
takes things from this, like thing that's deep inside that you don't have any control over, right? And I've seen this so many times with clients, with people that I know. I was talking to a woman not too long ago, and she was talking about this. Like she was, she came from these, like this narcissistic relationship was the one that she was in most recently, and she was talking to this new guy, and she was like talking about how she liked him and why she liked him. And she said that the guy reminded her of this guy from Game of Thrones, right? And I don't know if you've seen Game of Thrones or not, but there's this one guy in there who is just this horribly sadistic, sick individual who tortures people and, hunts them down and, kills them for fun, right? It's all for fun, right? And she's talking about how this new guy she's dating, she's so excited about him because he reminds her of this sick guy from Game of Thrones, right? I'm like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like, what are you trying? You know what I mean? It's like, wow, like just if you just listen to yourself, and you listen to your thoughts, you listen to your mind, you see what it is that you're doing, you take a moment and just get present and start paying attention to what you're actually doing. A lot of times things will start coming to awareness and you'll be like, this is going to keep getting me into the same situation. This is
Yes.
going to keep getting me into, things that I don't want. Instead, I can do almost anything different and I'll probably end up in a better situation.
Yeah.
Right. And so just getting awareness of what's going on and what you're doing and what you're attracted to and all that kind of stuff can help you start making more discernible decisions about what it is that you actually do want to have. And
right.
It'll help you be conscious and everything will be better in your life as a result.
Yeah.
So it's a great question. Yeah,
So
it's a great
good.
question.
Yeah.
I appreciate you asking it. And, instead of like, it's an interesting idea because there's, you can focus, like, you don't want to like just ignore everything that's bad in the world. Right. And you also want to focus on what it is that you want, because if you focus too much on the things that you're afraid of, you're just going to start feeling fear and attracting more fear into your life.
That's right.
And so what you want to do is focus on what it is that you want. If there are weeds in the garden, just pull the weeds out, but don't spend all your time thinking about the weeds and the weeds are coming and oh my God, don't do that. You don't need to. So, okay. Hi from Sweden. Looks like there's a couple people from Sweden here. 2 people from Sweden.
Great.
Poland, UK, Botswana, New Jersey, Boston.
How wonderful.
Greece.
You're all welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Thanks for being here. So, let's see. Ricky says, I experience this right now where my partner is dealing with a lot of things. His way to deal with it is keeping it to himself, and that makes me feel bad because I want to be there for him, which he knows, but it's hard to be in. What to do for myself? That's a good question, Ricky. And so what I would suggest, and a lot of people come to me and they're like, how do I get my guy to open up? Right. I want him to open up. I want him to be emotional. I want him to tell me what's going on. First off, you don't want to force anything with him, right? Always take care of yourself. Sometimes people have different ways of dealing with things. Sometimes guys like it happens for me a lot where I'm not even sure how to like verbally say things. I just know I'm feeling things, and and what usually works for me is going and calming down and letting my brain process. And then sometimes I'll come back and my brain will have the perfect answer for me. I didn't need to talk it out. I didn't need to, you know, go to therapy. I didn't need to go join a girls group and, whatever, right? I don't know. But that's how it works a lot of times for me. And talking about it just makes me feel worse sometimes. And so, and some people might have experiences, right? Maybe he has experiences where he has opened up before and it didn't work out for him, you know. I've had that happen to me too. And so, the best thing you do is just be there for him, and not try to force him to open up to you about those things. Just be there. And if like long term, the best way to do this, there's a concept in psychology that's called the go first principle. I know when I tell women about this, they absolutely hate it. And they're like, oh, go first. He needs to go first, right? And I'm like, yeah, I get it. However, in psychology, especially in like when it pertains to like emotional things, what they found is that if you go first, the other person's far more likely to want to reciprocate that, than if you're just like holding them and trying to make them do something or talk about something, right? And so, opening up to him about something that's going on with you, and then getting him to feel like it's okay, which he might not, right? Still, because some things he might feel embarrassed about, or he might feel like it's not something that you want to hear about, or all kinds of other things. Do you want to say something about this, Marcy?
I do. I love so much what you're saying, Matt, about number one, just recognizing that men have a different way of dealing with things than women. You take any woman like you and I, right? Not you, Matt, the one who asked the question. We could, meet each other for the first time on a train, and the next thing you know, we are sharing our life stories with each other. That's not how men are. But what I have found is that when we acknowledge to our partner that we can see, that we can feel that they're working through something, and ask them, what do you need from me? What do you want from me? I always like to come from that place of, I don't want to step on your toes, and I want to give you space if that's what you're needing. But let me know if I can be here for you. And if so, how? What would feel good? Can I give you a massage? Can I rub your feet? Do you want to just go for a walk? In other words, let your partner know that you're there, and they don't have to live up to your expectations about how to express what they're going through. Eventually, it's going to come, to you. You'll see how they have shifted, or maybe have not shifted. You'll see the results of how they have dealt with whatever their issues are. And then, of course, you can always approach it from your perspective. But when you do, it has to be without expectations of how you want them or need them or how they should express. I think that's one of the biggest issues, is that we have these expectations that if somebody is not communicating the way we are, or the way we want them to or expect them to, that there's something wrong. And that's not always the case. I find that coming from a place of compassion and not being afraid to ask questions. How can I love you? How can I help you? And if there is nothing, then be content with that. And you can still bring them a cup of coffee, or, put a blanket around them, whatever it is that would be a sign or a signal that you love them and are still wanting to comfort them without hovering and without there being strings attached. There's a certain amount of trust that has to happen for relationships to be able to bloom and to grow. And I think one of those is to allow our men to be men. They're not going to be us. And isn't that why we're attracted to them? Right? So allow them to be men. I mean, maybe they have to go out and, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it's like in Europe, but I know here, you know, throwing hatchets or something is like this, you know, this suddenly this popular thing. We have to accept that men are men, and also encourage them, let them know that they're safe with us, and when they are ready to talk or to express, that we're there to listen. So yeah, just come from your most compassionate and loving place. However, I will say that you also have to be aware that if a person shuts down, and with their shutting down, they shut you out, that's a whole completely different story. Now you've got toxicity. If that person, when they shut down, and pay attention to this, if you start to see signs where they are punishing themselves for shutting down, they're angry with themselves, they withdraw from themselves and their own needs, pay attention to that. That's toxicity. So this is where that awareness that you're now developing is going to really pay off for you. And the way it pays off is really going back to our very first opening conversation. And that is, how does it feel? How does it feel energetically? It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you know, being there for him, coming from the right energy, you know, connecting with him, letting him be him, you know, but also not making sure you're not getting stuck in a, you know, toxic situation or being hurt, you know. Everything that Marcy's saying is great. So let's see what other questions we have here. I got it. I get it. Lots of people saying they get it. Somebody agrees with me. You know what? Thank you. Thank you for agreeing. You should agree with me.
And if not, we want to hear about that too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. If you don't agree with it, you don't have to agree with me, you know, but you know, if you do, it's probably the right decision. Just kidding. Okay. So, Gretchen says, I am having a hard time finding the right person for me. I have 2 children who are disabled. How do I date when I have to take care of my children? It's a good question. Yeah, I mean, you know, one thing you might want to ask is, you know, should I be dating right now? Is it time for me to be dating right now? You don't necessarily need to date all the time, right? There was somebody who mentioned in the chat over here that, you know, they need a relationship, you know, like I need a partner, I need somebody. And it's like, you know, I think it's powerful to have partners, right? Having a toxic relationship is one of the most destructive things in the world. Having a healthy partner who supports you and is there with you is one of the most empowering things in the world. You know, what you need to look at is, for right now, is, you know, what's the best thing for you and your children right now? It might not be that you need to date right now. You know, it might be that, you know, you should focus on your children, or it might be that you should get some friends, right? Like if you don't have time, you know, sometimes it's, you know, it's best to focus on what's going on with you and what's going on in your life rather than trying to force something that you don't have time for, right? And the other thing I'd like to say is look at things and say, okay, how can I do this? And right? How can I do this and, and have it fit in with my life? I was talking about this idea of like making friends instead of dating, right? Like a lot of people look at this idea of dating and they're like, well, I got to do this and I got to dress up and I got to go out here and I got to spend a bunch of time and all this stuff. And it's like, sometimes that's not the best way to go about finding a relationship, because it puts a lot of pressure on you. It makes it so that, there's a bunch of expectations around everything. And sometimes it's better to start out as friends rather than going straight into dating and being in a relationship and, trying to force things that way. So, you know, I don't know what your life looks like and I don't know what's going on with you, outside of, what you said there, but, it's possible that you could find time and you could create something and, where you meet somebody and make friends and build something that way. And it's possible that maybe it's time right now just to focus on your children and, the blessings that you do have in your life right now.
Yeah. I think that's great advice, Matt. And I love so much about, the suggestion about making certain that you have a strong support system with friends. All right. Because, and especially if you can make friends with other mothers, I don't know, what the disabilities are that your children have, but most families that have children with disabilities, there is typically some sort of a support group where you can go and find the support that you need, make those friendships. And also that if you do date, I want to give you permission to just date. You don't have to date with the thought that you're going to develop a relationship because, like Matt said, it might just not be the time. But you can also date for the sake of dating. In other words, to give yourself that opportunity to get dressed up and go out to dinner, do something fun that's out of the ordinary. But to do that with the realistic approach that this is for the experience of doing that, getting out of the mundane of your life. And of course, you want to be upfront about that with the person that you date, because let's face it, there are lots of people that are lonely in this world and would really appreciate someone just to go out and have dinner with, go to a movie with, do something. And that's okay. But, and again, without knowing, the situation that you have at home, just make certain that you have the support system that you need so that you never, ever feel alone, because you're not. And then let things take their own course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We also have a suggestion here from Carly who says, invite him on an outing to your house with your kids. Get over that and go ahead yourself. If you don't know a guy very well, I wouldn't invite him around your kids. But the idea is, like you can definitely do things, to, to work around things, especially with the internet now. You can get in the trap of like getting, make sure that the person that you're talking to is real. If you do internet stuff, there's too many scammers out there these days, just way too many scammers. And it's important to make sure that you're actually getting yourself into a situation with a real human who is who they say they are. So be careful about that. But the internet's a powerful, powerful thing. You can, like I was for a while with my wife, I was, when we were dating, I was long distance, but we could, go and do anything. I could, put some earbuds in and go for a walk and talk to her while I'm doing that. Or, sometimes we would like put on a show or something and we would sit there and watch it together,
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a lot of things that you can do digitally now that were never possible before, where you can actually get to know somebody and spend time with them, even though you're busy, you're doing something else, or, you're at your home. And so there's a lot of possibilities now.
Yeah. And also, one more thing I would suggest is that you look for clubs in your area where people have the same interest as you. And this, again, it'll help to take you out of your situation at home and give you more of what's going to nourish you and nurture you as a person and be a safe situation for you. So those are, some things to explore.
Mm-hmm. Pam Beck says, I agree with Matt and Marcy 100% of the time. That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear, Pam. 100% of the time.
Thank you. Thank you for that vote of confidence. We appreciate it.
Antonia says, so if you're not healed, you become toxic without intention. I think that is a possibility, right? It's not always necessarily that, right? There tends to be kind of two sides to things when you have unhealed trauma. One is you can end up turning into the toxic one, right? Or end up hurting other people. And when we talk about toxic, sometimes we're not necessarily saying that you're a bad person or anything like that. What we're saying is that you end up hurting people, right? Or you end up, like creating more toxicity or more trauma in other people. And sometimes you might not even mean to, right? Just because you're trying to protect yourself. And so because you're trying to protect yourself, you might go to extremes, or you might lash out, and you might do things that you normally wouldn't do if you didn't have that unhealed trauma. And so it is possible to start being toxic as a result of unhealed trauma. That is a possibility. And that's what a lot of people are doing. That's what we're talking about. The other side of things, though, isn't about being toxic. It's about reinforcing that unhealed trauma that you have by letting people run all over you, by, reattracting negative people into your life and all that kind of stuff. So just because you have unhealed trauma doesn't mean that you're toxic, right? It just means that there's something that's going on with you that if you don't heal it, it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult to have like normal and healthy and calm and peaceful relationships, because you're going to get triggered by things. So let me give you an example real quick. When I was in the military, I was a combat veteran in Iraq, and I was, after that, I was in college with a friend of mine. We were going to a Arizona State football game, and there was a firework that went off, right? And I remember it vividly, because I was like, I immediately was like ready to drop to the ground, and like everything just started going off. And my friend Max, who was with me, he was like, hey, are you all right? And I was like, sorry, the fireworks just hit me sometimes, right? And he's like, oh, I forgot you were in the military, and it's one of those things where if you have stuff that's like, if you're in a situation where you're on edge all the time, or your cortisol's up, where you're fight or flight, where you feel like you're in danger all the time from your spouse, your husband, your boyfriend, whoever your partner is, that can end up translating out into the rest of your life, right? And so you have to heal that. You have to spend time to create calm and peace around that, to help your nervous system relax, so that you aren't on edge when you're around people.
Yeah.
Do you want to mention something around that?
I do. I want to just differentiate something for you. And that is, we all have unhealed wounds. That's what we're doing. And that's what our relationships very often provide for us. Like I said earlier, they provide an opportunity for us to heal those. What we're talking about when something becomes toxic is when you become abusive to another person or yourself. So let's say, for instance, Matt was in that situation where, he's suddenly ready to hit the ground, right? Well, what if Matt had started running around and like, hitting other people or tackling them or starting fights, all of this out of that unhealed wound. That then is toxic, all right, because he would be abusing others as a reaction to his wound being triggered. So this is where we really start to take responsibility for ourselves. And again, it's where this awareness is so essential. So when you have your wound triggered, all right, you have a choice right then and there. Am I going to react in a way that's going to make others suffer? Or am I going to respond to it instead and make certain that I get what I need to start to address and heal that wound? Wounds don't come up to punish you. That situation didn't come up to punish Matt for being in the service. It came up as a flag to say, Matt, this energy is still inside of you. And it's causing you fear, right? And it's harming you. And that's what every wound is. It's just coming up and it's saying, hey, I know that you want to be happy. I know that you want to be healthy. And so here I am. What do you want to do about this? There's always something to do, whether, it is finding someone to work with, or at least beginning by going inside of yourself and ask those very same questions that we talked about earlier. How can I love you? What can I do to comfort you? There's a little child inside of you who is like just waiting for you to ask those questions. And so if you start to look at yourself as that little child inside, that child will provide for you all the information that you need as a beginning. And then you go from there. So the toxicity is there only if you allow your wounds to adversely affect another. That is very toxic. When it adversely affects you by, having a blind eye to it and allowing it to get, triggered or reopened over and over and over again by putting yourself in abusive relationships, now it's toxic to you. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, that was a great
important distinction.
Yeah, it's great way of explaining it. You explained it better than I did. Once again, great job, Marcy. So we have somebody on
2 years of experience has served us well.
So we have a woman named La Girl who on Instagram who says the word narcissist is thrown around so much everywhere. Yeah. When it comes to attraction, can you talk about alpha and other male types? That, that's an interesting question there, La Girl. And one of the things I have to say about it is I would just ignore most of all of these different terms that people are using. I don't think it's particularly valuable. I mean, we can get into like the nuts and bolts of, this is this, and here's the differentiation between these different terms. Those terms are going to change, right? Those terms are being used right now, but they're not going to be used forever. And they haven't been used forever. And they're definitely going to change. And so, in fact, the alpha male thing, you just asked about the alpha male. Alpha male is a metaphor. It's not a real thing. They're not actually talking about real alpha males, right? This is a metaphor that comes from the animal kingdom, where they talk about, these alpha male, animals who run different packs. Human groups don't act the exact same way as those do, but they use the term because they want to describe these people that they like or that they dislike. And so narcissist does get used way too much, right? It does. Just plain out. People will say narcissist for just about any behaviors that they don't like now, right? And it's being overused. Generally, though, I think that it's, if what you want to look at, what I think is more useful is, is this something that's, like going to create the relationship that I want to have? Or is it something that's going to stop me from having the relationship that I want to have? Right? Is his behaviors moving us towards this place that I want to be, or is his behaviors moving us away from it? Right? And that I think is more valuable than getting into the nuts and bolts of this is an alpha male, this is a a Peter Pan guy, and this is a like a whatever other like terms that you want to throw out, narcissist, all that kind of stuff. Is he what I would study is this idea of healthy, and is this guy healthy? Right? What I would study is your own wants and desires and what you really want this relationship to look like. Spend time getting into it, thinking about it, feeling it, thinking about like, what does this look like? What are values of a guy that would lead to this? Right? The problem that most people have is that they just go for whatever they're attracted to, and then they wonder why they're in a bad situation. There was somebody else that was mentioning on here a little bit ago about this idea of like, excitement isn't always healthy, and it's like, yeah, it can be unhealthy depending on what you're normally excited about, right? We all have different kind of things that we're excited about. If in the past, right, the things that you get most excited about with men are, they end up being toxic men, then you might not want to go for the things that you're normally most excited about, right? Instead, you might want to start reevaluating what it is that you want in your life. Start thinking about, what are the characteristics of a man that that would lead to this relationship that I ultimately want. And then what you need to do is start valuing that more highly, right? Start associating the things that you don't want with disgust, right? It's gross, it's disgusting, it's boring. Used to be exciting to me. Now that narcissistic behavior is boring, right? This guy who's stable and strong, and maybe he's not dancing on the bar or whatever, but he's stable and all these different things that would lead to the relationship that I want. That's actually exciting to me. That's interesting. That's hot, right? And so when you can reassociate these things and change what it is that you are valuing at the time, right? Because we all value different things to different degrees. Start devaluing the things that you don't want and start valuing more highly the things that you do want. And you'll end up getting into better relationships as a result.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you said, Matt. And I think also, and this is kind of a little far out there, but I'm going to add it anyway, because I think we actually talked about it on one of our other shows, Matt. But relationships between men and women are changing, clearly. Okay. So that alpha male that you're referring to, he's going to be obsolete. And the reason for that is that in order to hold and live up to that persona, that alpha male has to, be the one that is in control at all costs. We've seen the effects of in control at all costs all around the world, and it's not pretty. So I also want you to know that what is actually happening with all of you that are on this call is that the divine feminine must be healed first. We actually have a responsibility, and again, I know it sounds lofty, but it's the truth. We have a responsibility to ourselves to heal our hearts. And in the ripple effect of that, we are giving permission to men to be able to heal theirs. So we have to take a look at what the world is calling for now, right? The world is calling for peace. The world is calling for the best parts of humanity to come forward. The world is calling for a greater sense of responsibility towards each other but also towards ourselves, to make certain that we are really being the best that we can be, so that we can create the relationships that are the best for us. So in putting this sort of in the forefront of our hearts, we're actually coming into our purpose as women. Our purpose as women is that we are the great receivers of the universe. The men are the providers. And so when we allow ourselves to do the healing that's being called for, we suddenly can let go of all of this fear of needing to protect ourselves from the male who is going to be in control at all costs, including us. What happens is that as we heal those parts of ourselves and we're able to receive love as we actually want to experience it, it means that we're going to give permission to our men to give that love in the way that we want and need to receive it. And then we then are able to give it back to them because they are the providers. So, and I know it sounds like, what does the world have to do with me? Everything. Everything in the world has to do with you, because you're the one who is either reacting to the triggering of your wounds and creating more toxic relationships, or choosing to respond instead and saying to yourself, okay, how can I see this differently? What do I need to do in order to, prepare myself to receive what I say that I want? It's going to take commitment. It's going to take that loyalty to yourself, loving yourself. And of course, it's going to take courage, because you'll have to let go of the programming and the patterns and the conditioning and all of that, and just recognize how precious you are, instead of waiting for someone else to recognize that first. So we recognize first how precious we are, that we deserve to be loved and cherished beyond all measure. And guess what? It's exactly what you're going to experience. And the man that's going to be giving you that level of love, it's a beautiful thing. It's exactly what you've been waiting for, but you've also been preparing for. So
get excited about it.
Get excited.
It's coming.
That's right.
So Fabaha says, good to see you laughing together. Well, thanks. It's good. I feel like it's good for us to be laughing together too. Carly says, stop fearing yourself. Alyssa says, gracias, con mucho gusto. Yeah, I've got at least a couple other words I can say in Spanish for sure. Let's see. Right? Natasha says, hi, please, can you tell me how to behave for a man who kept silent for 5 days, then came back? Yeah, that's a good question. No. So I got this one. This is
you go, Matt.
Here a lot, right? So there's a couple things that you want to think about, right? And so the first one I'm going to give you is this idea that I call the communication blueprint, right? Everybody's got a different communication blueprint for different periods. Like, I don't know how long you know this guy, let's just assume that you're dating him, right? So people have a different idea of what is expected and what they need to do when they're dating somebody. And everybody's different, right? You will talk to, like, as a guy, I'm a guy, might not know that, but I am. And if I go on a date with a woman, which I don't because I'm married, by the way, then every woman's going to be different in what she wants, how she wants to be communicated with. And he's expected to figure that all out, right? And so for some women that he talks to, they're going to want good morning and good night texts. They're going to want to talk during the day, throughout the day. They're going to want to jump on the phone at night, right? And they're going to want to do this every single day, right? There are some people like that. 100%. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And then there's some women out there who want to talk, every few days, once a week. They're busy. They got other things going on, and they want to set up the date and then meet up with you, right? There are women out there that are like that. And these are two extremes, right? And somewhere you're likely in the middle of that, right? You're somewhere in the middle of that, right? And so he is also somewhere in that as well, because while you have some preferences, I don't know what your preference is. Let's say it's, you want to talk to him every other day, right? He has a preference as well that he likes, and he's also trying to not screw things up with you, right? And so what you want to do about this is have a conversation about it, right? And get on the same page about your communication blueprint. And here's how you do it. It's a great way to do it. So what you want to do is you want to say, hey, those couples that they're like, they're like just talking all the time. They're just like glued to their phones, and they're like talking to each other like 24 hours a day. What do you think about that? Right? So you're taking an extreme case and you're going, hey, this is something that people do. What do you think about that? And he's going to say, he's probably going to be like, wow, it's just way too much. Or like, don't they have lives? Like, what are they doing? Right? And then what you say is, well, what do you think two people who are dating, how often do you think they should, be in contact with each other? Right? And then he's going to tell you what his communication blueprint for dating is. And what you do is then respond back with what you think is appropriate. And you are likely going to be off of each other, right? And so what you do is you go, hey, I'd really like it if, like it would be really attractive to me if, right? And then you communicate what you would like, right? Doesn't mean he's going to do it, right? But you're communicating what it is that you want. And a lot of times there's some kind of middle ground that people end up reaching, or one person, becomes okay. You're like, okay, well, he just wants to do this. So, now I don't have to freak out that he didn't talk to me for 5 days, because I know that he only wants to talk, once every 5 days because he's busy throughout the week and he's stressed out and he doesn't have time for it, right? Or whatever, right? And then the second thing I want to mention here is to remember to focus on what it is that you want, right? You can have some leniency and there can be some, back and forth. But, if a man really likes you and he wants to be with you, what's he going to do? One, he's going to try to please you, to a healthy extent. And two, he's going to want to pursue you, and he's going to want to talk to you, and he's going to want to do all these things, right? And so you want to make sure that you're getting in a good situation, right, where you're being valued and you're being cared for and you're being taken care of, and you have somebody that cares about you and your needs and your emotions and what it is that you want, right? That's what you want to get into. You want to have somebody who cares about you. And that's why it's so important to have this conversation and communicate what it is that you want, so that he knows what it is that you want. He might not always be able or willing or, wanting to do exactly what it is that you want, right? You show up, you're like, yeah, I want, 10 Prada bags, at my door next week, right? He might not be willing to do that, right? But he does want to, you guys have values, and you're seeing if they're in alignment. And whether you're the right people for each other. Dating is getting to know each other and determining on a trial basis whether this is a good person long-term for you to be in a relationship with or not. What it is not attaching yourself to whoever you're most attracted to and then trying to turn them into the right guy for you. That's what it's not. So I hope that helps, Natasha. Do you want to mention anything?
I do. And unfortunately, we don't really have enough information about your situation. For instance, if you've only had one date with this person and, they call you 5 days later, that's, acceptable. If he's calling you and saying, hey, let's have another date. If you're living together and he takes off for 5 days and you don't hear from him, that's a whole different story. So without that information, it's kind of hard for us to really respond to you. However, what I will say is this. Number one, I like so much what you said, Matt. Try to be upfront about what your expectations are. But I also want to encourage you to have a conversation so that it'll make it easier for you to interpret what you experience there. But number three, again, we have to come back to the clarity. What do you want? Matt said, if a guy is really into you, okay, he's going to do everything he can to please you. So you have to look at all of these different situations and really sort of determine, what's appropriate for you. But I'm also a big proponent in going into any relationship with being as transparent as possible about what it is I'm looking for and whether or not that person is looking for the same thing. If that person is just looking for an occasional, hookup or just to date or, maybe eventually a long-term relationship, and you're looking for marriage, that's not the right partner for you. Don't go down that road because, like Matt said, you'll find yourself trying to turn that person into what you want and need them to be when they were upfront, right from the beginning about what they were looking for, and it wasn't the same as what you were. So make sure that you're looking for the same thing when you start out, whether it's dating or you can feel yourself being drawn to a person that you would like to create a relationship with. So that's really, really important. And the other thing is, a lot can happen in 5 days. Maybe that person has another family. I mean, they could be, pursuing that. You just don't know. So you have to, again, what is appropriate for you is to look at your situation and say, is that appropriate? And does that align with what I want in my love relationship? So, and don't, particularly in the beginning, do not accept what isn't there in terms of having the potential to create what you want. Only allow that energy that has the potential and the possibilities of creating what you want be what you pursue. Because whatever it is, it will grow. And that's what you'll be dealing with in the future.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. 100%. And that actually takes us into this next comment where Leslie says, I'm a gal that jumped in too soon with an anxious attachment man. I tried to help him obtain his own agency. Now I'm feeling like the narcissist. He's making it very hard to be nice. So, Leslie, thanks for saying something on here. And one thing you want to think about is, and I just want to mention for everybody out there, most people are jumping into situations too quickly with people.
Yeah.
It's just way too fast. We're doing it way too fast. In America, on average, people hook up somewhere within the first 3 dates with each other. And I recommend that on average, and I recommend that you guys just wait. Stop hooking up with anybody, right? Don't hook up with anyone, right? If your emotions are really high, really make sure, like, if you're having a hard time trusting yourself, like, set situations up so that you get the outcome that you want. Always go to public places. Don't go somewhere. Don't go to his place. Don't have him come to yours. Don't do any of that kind of stuff.
That's right.
Right. So Leslie's saying, I helped him obtain his own agency. Now I feel like the narcissist. One of the things that you'll find, and I'll just speak a little bit into this, like attachment style theory kind of a framework, because it's a decent framework to kind of like look at people. If you're an anxious attachment style, even if you're a secure attachment style, and you start dating somebody who's an avoidant attachment style, that can trigger some of your tendencies to be more anxious. And if you're not familiar with what we're talking about, avoidant attachment men tend to need lots of space, right? That's what they need. They tend to pretend like they don't have emotional needs or that they don't need somebody in their life. And so they like, lean back and they, like need lots of space. And if you kind of do something, put too much pressure on them, they disappear, right? And anxious attachment style is the opposite. They tend to move towards people more and more and more. And what it creates is this polarity effect where the attachment, the anxious person's trying to like get into this relationship with this person, and the avoidant is trying to like get as much space as humanly possible, and it ends up turning into like this whirlwind of like emotional highs and lows that come from it. And you might start seeing yourself acting manipulative as the anxious partner, because you're trying to get your needs met, right? You're like, hey, I want to feel like you care about me. And so I'm going to do all these things to try to get you to show me that you care, right? And what you should do in this situation, Leslie, since you jumped into, really quickly, is you want to take a step back and, instead of, just committing yourself to this relationship, go, is this actually a good place for me to be, right? And if you have an anxious, an avoidant partner, right, and you're an anxious partner, what you're going to need is two completely different things, right? You're both going to ultimately need the same thing, which is to feel a calm. You're going to want to feel peace. You're going to want to have security around yourself, but it's going to be in different ways, right? And so the question that you want to ask yourself, Leslie, is a relationship with this guy going to give me what it is that I need in a relationship in order to feel secure? And like what Marcy was talking about, if you ignore the things that are missing right now, you ignore the red flags, you ignore the deal breakers, you ignore the places where you are just not aligned in your values, which I'm not saying that they are, but it's likely, because this is a very common scenario that I see over and over and over again. You might want to question whether this is actually a relationship that's going to get you there or not, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, in the framework of attachment styles, everybody needs to be working towards becoming secure and going with a partner where you can deal with each other's insecurities in a healthy, respectful, and productive way, right? So I have, like what Marcy was saying earlier, we all have traumas, right? I've got traumas. My wife has traumas, right? She has some stuff around, cheating or being left or somebody, doing something like that. And it's really easy for me because I don't have any stuff around that, right? And so I can just be like, hey, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here with you, I love you, that kind of a thing, right? Because it's really, really easy for me because I don't have any stuff around that. And I have stuff where she can just be calm and chill and cool around me with my traumas, and it helps us both heal, right? And it's a great partnership that way. It's something where we're both getting our needs met, our most fundamental needs. So,
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And what a great role model you are. But I did have a thought, Leslie, and that is what I'm sensing here is that you've lost respect for him. And there's I'm not going to say it's impossible, but typically, there's not too many other places to go from there. And so what I would say to you is the most important thing is that you start to examine why you went into that style of relationship, what it was in you in that moment, that caused you to create that, because you don't want to repeat that. This is where we start to recognize the difference between men and boys who are pretending to be men and then real men. So it's important for you to take a look at like what was active in you at the time, and maybe even what part of you were not nurturing at the time. You know, we talk about these wounds, and they're triggered, and what we need for healing. And a lot of times we deflect the healing that we need by trying to heal somebody else. Okay, and it's not a judgment, it is an observation. I've seen it over and over and over again. So be fearless and just look within yourself and say, how can I nourish and nurture myself more? And how can I heal those parts within me so that I don't ever find myself having, deposited so much energy into the healing of somebody else and realize that person is not the one for me. I look forward to hearing about, what you discover in that journey, because you will be so powerful when you do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Slavka says, I appreciate your teachings and opinions. Thank you. Well, you are absolutely welcome.
So welcome.
Yoli says, hi, Matthew. Thanks for the great content. You're absolutely welcome. Thank you, Marcy, for being here, part of this. You're awesome. Marcy and I have known each other for a long time. It's really cool for us.
So awesome.
Friends hanging out and doing all this stuff together. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Bukuri says, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I mean, if you want to say nice things about us, we aren't against you saying nice and wonderful things about us and all the things that we're saying.
It's great to be appreciated, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, for sure. Kathy says, Matthew, I find it hard to believe you've done so much with your life as you only look like you're 20 years old. Well, thank you. Actually 43 years old, but I appreciate that. Yep. Cynthia says, thank you for your service from one vet to another. Well, thank you for your service. Appreciate you. Let's see. There was somebody else here. If you have a question, go ahead and put a question mark on your sentence that you leave, and it'll indicate to us that we need to that it's a question that we need to answer.
Yeah.
Okay. So Teacher for Bold Learner says, have you ever experienced a chain of troubles and chaos after feeling in love and emotionally attached to a woman? I think what you're actually saying there, Teacher for Bold Learner, is what you're saying is what you're asking is one of the big things that a lot of people kind of mistake is kind of these feelings of attraction with love, right? Being in love with, or being in love and being attracted to somebody, right? Or love and being attracted to somebody. Those are often kind of confused things, and it's understandable because we all have like lots of it's a subjective thing that's going on inside of our bodies, and it's like, okay, well, what am I feeling right now? It's really intense, and I must be in love, and you're like, but what I think you're actually talking about is attraction here. Because when I'm feeling love, or like this feeling of being connected or like one with somebody, which is what I talk about when I talk about love, I would say that I am definitely not experiencing a chain of troubles and chaos, right? If I'm attracted to somebody and that person that I'm attracted to has some things going on, some unhealed trauma, some chaos or whatever, that can happen, right? And I have experienced that before, and that's kind of what we're talking about with this idea of like, you're attracted to somebody, you're really excited about them, but they're not really a good person for you to be with, right? it's kind of in that same realm. And that's why it's important to get kind of clear on what you're attracted to and what you want to be attracted to, and what you want to have in your life. We've talked before. Marcy was talking a little bit about this earlier, and I've talked before about this idea about like finding, like, you don't attract what you want, you attract what is most familiar, right? And so you want to get familiar with things that you want to have more of in your life. You want to experience, right? There's a saying out there. I don't know if I don't know where this came from, um, but it goes like this: um, what you focus on, you feel, and what you feel, you receive more of, right? And so you want to, like, Marcy does an amazing job of this, right? And it was funny because I was like talking to my brother about this, and he was like, yeah, I talked to Marcy, and she was like, she is just so determined that we're moving in a great direction in the world right now. And I'm like, that's my Marcy, you know what I mean? And I mean, she's really, really good at being focused on, creating what she wants,
Yeah.
and great things that are coming in the world, right? And what you want to do is start focusing on what it is that you want, right? And the problem that most people have in dating is that they just wait, right? They're really, really overly strict at, like, screening people out until they're attracted to someone, until they feel like they're in love. And then they throw out all their standards out the window, right? And they just like go head in and commit themselves to somebody that is a total, not what they're looking for, not what's going to bring them to the relationship that they ultimately want, right? And so what you need to do is start saying, okay, what is going to take me to this relationship? Not necessarily, traits, or this guy's doing this one thing or not, but what emotions do you want to experience in a relationship? And there's really only 4 of them. Okay. And one of them is, the one that everybody focuses on is excitement, right? They want to feel excited, right? That's the chemistry, that's the passion, that's the, the second one the second one, which most people say is boredom, is actually security, right? It's the boring emotion, right? It's, somebody's there for me. They're not going anywhere. You know they're there when I need them. They're committed. That kind of a thing. The third one is love, right? Which is, a lot of people get mixed up with being in love or excitement or whatever. But what love is like, you are like intertwined with this person. They've got your back. They're there for you. They're, like, they're your calm in the storm. You come to them and they love on you, right? And then the fourth one is value, right? It's feeling like you're important. It's feeling like you're important to this person, that you're an important part of their life, that you're a priority to them, that you are somebody special and unique to them, that you're not just like one of every woman that they've met, right? Those are the 4 emotions that you want to experience. And most people focus on just the excitement part. But these 3 are far, I mean, they're at least as important, if not more important, in an actual relationship to make it be a healthy relationship. And so that's what you want to focus on, is you want to focus on all, because you have to have the excitement part, right? I don't talk about it as much because everybody focuses on that, but it needs to be there. You need to have some excitement. You can create it though, right? It doesn't, like, all these emotions, they aren't just either there or not, right? You create all of these things. And when you get into a relationship, we were talking about that earlier, you want to start focusing on creating these emotions within yourself and within this person. If you do it before you get into a relationship, you'll recognize it when it's there or when it's not there in a partner that you want to potentially have something with. And then you can be like, I don't really feel secure here. I don't really feel like a priority here. I don't really feel loved, like somebody's got my back. So
Yeah,
am I
no, it's
babbling
great.
on, Marcy?
Yeah, absolutely great. And the only other thing that I want to say to you is that energy never lies. Never, ever lies. Okay. So what that means is that if you are seeing the aftermath of this coming together energetically as creating chaos and creating, whatever else it is in your life, trouble, I think you said, that's the energy that has attracted each other. So I'm not saying that that you necessarily were inviting trouble, but what I am saying to you is when you see that kind of energy rise right up, that's an indication that that will become the foundational energy for your relationship. My guess is you will want to walk away, maybe even run, because that will never change. So as Matt was saying, you have other options on the energies that you want to build a foundation for your relationship. And that should be your tester. What are you feeling when you come together with somebody? And what are you seeing that energy creating? Again, the chaos, the trouble, it will always be the foundation of your relationship. And it will also be eventually what you will deliberately create more of, because it will take you back to that moment of feeling the excitement that Matt was talking about, because that was your original attraction. You cannot build a sustainable relationship from that. You will be exhausted beyond any levels of exhaustion you have ever experienced before, because you will constantly have to recreate chaos and trouble in order for the two of you to feel alive with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
That's
one
a toxic relationship.
and the problem with doing it is that the longer you stay there, the more comfortable it becomes, and the more it's natural for you to go back there, get drawn back there. That's why we talk about like what's familiar to you. What are you creating that becomes familiar?
Mm-hmm.
So Sabina says, Matthew, I know your videos for a while, and I can say you gave me some of the best advice.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's what I like to hear. Croatia says, good evening, good people. Matthew, cool new hairstyle. Well, I appreciate that. Mariana says, how to activate the masculine energy in my husband. His entire childhood, he has been surrounded by women, his mother, his aunt, his two sisters, his father being absent most of the time, and when present, not emotionally available. So he's always waiting to receive, not to provide, but to be cared and provided. I need to provide, lead, organize everything. He just expects to receive and not to offer anything in exchange, like he deserves everything. So how to activate his masculine? Thank you. That's a great question, Mariana. And it's a challenging situation, because the challenging part of a lot of relationships, especially when you get deep in and you're in a marriage, right, is to look back and be like, okay, well, now things aren't what I wanted them to be. And, you look at it and you're like, but they've kind of always been that way,
Right.
And that's what I got myself into. And I knew he was like this, but now I want something different. Right. And it becomes it's a lot more challenging to change things when they've been a certain way for a really long time. So the women that are watching, that are dating, remember, it's better to get a guy that's already doing these things, right? Rather than get into a relationship with a guy that isn't, and then trying to make him be something that he's literally never been in his entire life before.
That's
right. And are there things that you can do? Absolutely. There's a ton of different things that you can do. You can have talks with him about it. You can ask him for things. That's one of the easiest things to do. He might be up for it, he might not, but when he does it, praise him for it. People like to do things that they feel good about and that they get rewarded for. And so, it might sound a little bit like, Pavlov's dog kind of a thing going on here, but there is some merit to that, right? Um, it's a challenging situation. I know it's tough. One of the best things that you can start doing is uh, asking yourself, like, what kind of energy do you want to be in, right? And start focusing on that, right? Because there is a biological component to all of this, right? So the challenge that you have is, decades of him being a certain way, right? That's the challenge you have. The thing that's supporting what you want is that there's a biological component to it, right? And the question is whether he's willing to step up, because it's like, the longer you're in a certain position, the more difficult it is to move. It's the law of inertia, right? So things that are staying still are going to stay that way until there's something that pushes it, but it's going to want to stay the way that it's always been. A lot of guys do end up finding a lot of happiness and joy in stepping into their masculinity, though. And so it's not like it's totally a lost cause. It's just going to be challenging for you. There's, like I said, there's a lot of things that you can do. And my suggestion is that you don't try to do it all at once. You don't try to, force him to do something, but you start getting yourself into the emotions and state. Marcy was talking about feminine energy before, like getting into your own feminine energy. What happens a lot of times with guys, even if they haven't been in their masculine, is that sometimes they'll step up because their innate biological drives will make them feel like they need to in that time. And so I would get more into your feminine energy and start asking him for things that are getting him to be a little bit and a little bit and a little bit more into his masculine, and praise him for those things, and eventually things can shift and change. Do you want to say anything about that?
I do. I'm a little more black and white when it comes to things like this, because number one, it's not your responsibility to change him. Although I do understand that you would want to, give your marriage your very best shot. But it takes two people in that relationship to be working towards the same goal. And so I think you need to have a conversation with him and let him know that that you're not willing to, be in service to him anymore in the way that you were. And I think that you can expect to get some pushback. It's very difficult, like Matt was saying, once you've established these roles and the way that, you interact with each other. It's difficult to make changes, but it's not impossible. But he has to know that you want and need something different from him. And then, frankly, it's up to him. It's up to him to change. It's up to him to want to please you and be more of the man that you want and need. So, the fact that he's been raised, to believe that this is your role, like I said, you can expect some pushback. But this is where you also have to decide how much your happiness and your health and well-being means to you. Because if you are going to continue to put your energy into this relationship and you're not getting back anything that you need, what will eventually happen is you will be creating more and more resentment, and you will lose respect for your husband. And a woman who has lost respect for her husband, it's a tough comeback. It's a really, really tough comeback. So Um, yes, I love that Matt said, really step into your femininity, and, hopefully that will stimulate more masculinity within him. But he has to want to change. He has to see that the patterning that was developed from his childhood is toxic to you and your marriage, because you're not willing to perpetuate it.
Yeah. Just to kind of go off of what I was talking about, I think that it's always worth it to try to
Mhm.
salvage things,
Yep.
and a lot of times people like, especially in this day and age, people are really, really quick to kind of throw things out. They're just like, let them be dead, like move
Mhm.
on, right? Run away, right? And all that kind of stuff. But it's if you're married to somebody, you have a lot of time together and you spend a lot of emotion and
Yeah.
things together. So it's definitely worth it to try, to work things out. And I recommend that you do. If you need help, you can
Yeah,
talk to us. You can go to my
that's right.
website, matthewcoast.com. You can talk to Marcy. We can help you out.
Mhm.
Um, let's see.
But I just want to say, be upfront, because you are important. It's important that, you have someone who is also working with you, and to create the kind of relationship that is going to be sustainable in the long run. So I'm just a firm believer in really expressing yourself and acknowledging your needs. And yeah, you'll find out whether or not he's willing to work with you, which is really important. A lot of people think that marriage is about coming together and just being married. That relationship, the marriage itself, needs to be the focus. And the marriage is what will sustain you and your entire family in all of the ups and downs, all the twists and turns that life has ahead. And so just, making sure that you're both on the same page and working towards the same goal of creating a strong foundation where you're both giving to the marriage what it needs, is really important.
Absolutely. Yep, it's tough, because a lot of people get into situations and they don't have all this information. They don't
That's
know
right.
what they should be looking for. They just do things because that's how we've always done things, since the beginning of time.
Hmm.
It's only been recently that we've had dating advice or relationship advice that was, this well curated and spoken about. So,
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up too much about being in that situation. Focus
Hmm.
forward, focus on what you want, and like Marcy said, be transparent, be upfront,
Hmm.
be real. Have a conversation about it, and talk about what you want. And one of the best ways to do it is to talk about how much joy it would bring you, instead of like attacking him or shaming him or
Right.
any of that. Talk about what you want and how it would make you feel, and find things that he's already done that show you he's been in his masculine, because nobody's always in their feminine or masculine, right? We all
Sure.
have masculine and feminine. So he's acted masculine before. It's probably one of the things that brought you, that drew you to him, to some extent. And so find those things, praise those things, talk about those things, and yeah, if you need more, talk to us.
That's
Talk
right.
to us.
We'll be here.
All right, Shannon says, "Oh my gosh, how cool! I just clicked this. I watch your videos all the time. You give great advice." I don't know if that's actually how you talk, Shannon, but that's how you talk in my mind. Honest AF says, "What type of attachment is considered healthy?" What they call it is secure. They call it a secure attachment style. And basically, what it is it's the middle ground. Like we were talking earlier about, like the magic is in the middle. The middle ground a lot of times is where the healthy stuff is, right? And that's when they're talking about attachment styles, that's where it's at. Is this place where you're calm, you're peaceful, you're talking about things rationally, you're not jumping from one extreme to the other, you're not attacking each other over small things. You're understanding, but you're not like throwing your own needs away to be understanding to them. You're doing it from a strong and secure and empowering place. That's the best place for you to be.
Yeah. And also to realize that that's really the beauty of the relationship. The beauty of the relationship is the energy that you create together. So you each come with your own frequencies, right? Your own identities. And the energy that you create together is one that becomes sustainable and expansive when you move into the relationship, recognizing that it's more important to respond than react. Your response is always something where you can make a choice that will feed the relationship. Reactions are reactions based on past history, and very often they can be quite destructive because it comes from unhealed wounds. Responses come from healed wounds. So, just stay focused on the energy that you're creating together. And it can be a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's see. So Rebecca says, here from Sydney, Australia, Matthew, you saved me a fortune on a therapist. Well, I'm glad I did. She says, how do I sincerely detach and not just pretend to, or is it fake it till you make it? That's a good question. I think there's something to be said about acting as if, right? That's what fake it till you make it means, is that you act as if you are whatever it is that you want to be, right? So if you think about, like, I want to be healthy, right? I want to be healed. And then you start acting as if you are healthy and healed, right? That's what it means to fake it until you make it. I don't love that term, but that's what it means, right? And I think there's good about that, right? What you don't want to do is you don't want to actually ignore trauma and things that are going on with you and pretend like it doesn't exist and pretend like, you don't have it and, ignore it. Like, you don't want to do that, right? Because it will fester and it will come to the surface. It might not be today, it might not be next month, it might not be next year, but it will come like a ball in the water. Like you take a ball and you put it in the water, you jump in the pool with a ball and you like push it down, and then it like you got it down there and you're like, yeah, I got the ball down, right? And then it goes whoop, boom, right, and pops right back up, usually smacks you in the face when it does it. That's what your unhealed trauma will do if you do not actually take some time to heal it and deal with it and do some heart shifting like Marcy talks about, right? You need to actually address it, and just like a wound, right? Like if you have a cut on your arm, if you don't heal it, right? Like some cuts, right? They're light, they can kind of heal on their own, right? And it's fine. You might have a little bit of a scar or whatever, but some cuts, they're going to get infected, right? And they're going to get swollen. And then, at some point you're going to have gangrene, and then we're going to have to cut your arm off. I wouldn't do it personally. I would never do that. But, then you're going to walk around and you know what I mean? It's not going to be a good thing. And so you want to make sure you clean it out and get it healed properly. That way you can, not end up losing your arm.
That's right. Yeah. The other thing is that I encourage, particularly with breakups, a lot of journaling. and do whatever you need to do. Put some, soft music on, light a candle, just put yourself in the position where you're going to pour your heart out and let yourself journal. If you need to stab the page a couple of times, stab the page, but keep writing. There's something about, when we give ourselves the opportunity to incorporate our neural pathways, right? We're connecting our heart with our mind and with our hands. And that is how we actually make the connection energetically to release. So just trying to think it away, not going to work. Just trying to, ignore what your heart is saying, not going to work. So what we do is we bring everything together and we give them the opportunity to be expressed. Let yourself cry. If you have trouble crying, find something that helps you to bring those tears forward. Old pictures, old memories, a romantic film, whatever it is. Encourage the tears. These are things that people often try to ignore and try to, just sort of dismiss, when that's where your healing is. Your healing is to get all of that energy out and to write down those hopes and dreams that you need to grieve. They're not coming to fruition with that person, but those hopes and dreams remain in your future. If you release your attachment to those hopes and dreams, being part of that relationship with that person where they could not grow. So this is where we start to really distinguish, is it the hopes and dreams that are impossible, or were you trying to create them from the foundation of a relationship that didn't have that potential? In which case, it gets easier and easier then to let that person go. And you can let them go with grace. You can let them go with love and with appreciation. But you can still keep those hopes and dreams in the forefront of your heart because you deserve those.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Got to remember that you do deserve it, and right. that you can have it. And right. It seems so easy, right? It seems like, oh, I just need to let go, right? It's like letting go of a steering wheel, letting go of a car door, right? Like we let go of things every day, all the time, right? And it seems so easy, and in some ways it is easy, and sometimes it's not, because you've been holding on for so long, and that attachment, it feels comfortable to you. It feels great, but you can't ever get to the promised land if your boat is still tied to the dock. Right? You gotta let go so that you can actually go somewhere and go into the sunlight, go to the promised land that you've been looking for, and start steering your own boat, and start going in the direction that you want to go. And you can absolutely do it.
That's right. Do it. And you don't have to give up your hopes and dreams. I have this saying, I say this all the time, but if you wanted steak and potatoes, you wouldn't walk into a Chinese restaurant. You'd go to the steak and potatoes restaurant. And it has nothing to do with putting the Chinese restaurant down or making the steak and potatoes more important. It's just, if this is what you want, go where it is, where it can be delivered to you, where you can actually experience it.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. Still going to have the hope and the dream of that steak and potatoes. Only now it's real.
Now you can actually go there. Yeah. A lot of people get addicted to the dream, right? Yeah. And they're so addicted to the dream, and they're so afraid that they can't actually accomplish it, that they never make an attempt to do it. They just hold on to that dream, right? And what you're doing is actually letting go of holding on and moving towards that dream, because the dream is so much better than the going and actually experiencing the dream is so much better than just having the dream in your mind.
Sure.
Kathy says, do you think there are people who have been so traumatized that they are incapable of feeling love? I think that there are people who have been so traumatized that they are scared of love, that they're afraid of opening up. There's this misconception that a lot of people have that love is traumatizing, that they were traumatized by love, that they were hurt by love. You weren't hurt by love. You were hurt by fears. You were hurt by expectations. You were hurt by, somebody, by not valuing yourself in a situation enough to say that you actually value your own voice, your own body, your own life, your own, everything that your dreams, the things that you want, right? That's what hurt you. It wasn't love. Love can't hurt you, right? The only thing that can hurt you is, people stuck in their human condition and in their trauma and in their fears and in their insecurities and in their, I mean, that's literally fears and insecurities literally drive most or maybe all of the toxic behaviors that exist, right? It's people that are afraid of not being enough, right? That's what the narcissist is. He's so consumed by his ego, because he's afraid that he's not actually enough, that he's not actually worthy, that he's not actually good enough for you in the world and, to be alive and, all kinds of things. And so they try to dominate and control and manipulate things in order to, like in order to try to heal or soothe their external wound, but it's a wound that's much deeper. And so they because they're not actually doing the work, they're incapable of actually healing it, and they're not looking to do the work. They're looking to just have their egos constantly be fed instead. And so I'm kind of running off on a tangent here, but I think that people will avoid experiencing love because they're afraid that if they are vulnerable or that they let go or that they open up, that they're going to be hurt again. I think that's what is there.
So I would say that in general, the answer to that is, of course, you can love. You are love. That is the energy of your creation. So you were actually created with the energy of love. It's the fiber that creates all things in the universe. What Matt was saying, is the allowing of love. That's a big part of it. And the other part of it is recognizing that you are not defined by your trauma. You are a magnificent child of this universe. And you are loved and cherished beyond all measure, even if it appears that the traumas that you have in your past are saying something different. And so part of your journey in healing with traumas is to, come back to your heart. Trauma lives, basically in your head. It has been perpetuated and retrieved, right? The memory of it is retrieved through your mind over and over and over again. But the trauma does not exist actually in your heart. Your heart remains pure. And so we start to recognize that the healing that is being called for is one where you come back home to the truth of you, and you let your experiences be experiences. But again, they don't define you. So there are a number of ways to do that. And you have to, of course, get the guidance and the mentorship to bring you back into your heart over and over and over again. But you also have the responsibility of reminding yourself that every traumatic experience was that, a traumatic experience. And that your truth is that you are love itself, and that none of that exists in your heart, which is where love is waiting for you.
Yeah, you're not afraid of love. They're not afraid of love. You are love. You
You are love.
You're afraid of being hurt. You're afraid of being rejected. You're afraid of not being enough. So we're kind of running into the end of this session today. So I just want to close up by doing a quick little exercise real fast. So
Sure.
just take a deep breath in and out. Deep breath in and out. Deep breath in and just sigh it out. And at the end here, we're just going to, if you're not familiar, I have something called the Queen's Mantra. We're going to say it 3 times, and it goes like this. I am valuable. I am worthy. I deserve to be cherished. I am valuable. I am worthy. I deserve to be cherished. I am valuable. I am worthy. I deserve to be cherished. And I want you to leave here today just remembering that you are valuable, you are worthy, and you do deserve to be cherished. Right. You have love within inside you. You don't need to be afraid of it because it is you. It's part of who you are. And the more that you step into that love, the more you shift into it with your heart, the more you can experience it, and the more that you will become abundant with your own love and start pouring that love out into the world and attract more of it to you. Do you want to say anything as a parting, Marcy?
Yeah, I do. This is my own personal mantra, particularly when I start to feel that I'm perhaps overwhelmed with things and I've forgotten, that I'm who I am. And I just say, that was then and this is now. So whenever those memories come up, when those traumas come up, that was then and this is now. And right now, I choose to breathe through my heart, to remember who I am, that I am love itself, and that in my heart, I can create all things. So, yeah, I'd like to just leave that with you and let yourself be empowered by it. That was then, and this is now.
That was then, and this is now. Beautiful. And if you want anything more from Marcy, you can check out the link that we put in the comments. And I hope you all have a beautiful day, beautiful night, beautiful morning, wherever you are in the world. And we will speak with you again soon.
Yep. Bye-bye, everybody.